Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. My name is Dana Mantilia. I will be your host, and our guest today is Nat Shere. Welcome, Nat. How are you?
Good. How are you, Dana?
Very good. Why don't you take a minute and tell us a little bit about you, your background, what you do, all that kind of jazz?
Absolutely. So I work as a penetration tester right now, primarily as a consultant, but I've worked almost 9 years now in the security industry, both as a consultant doing third-party penetration tests, but also as a product engineer working directly with the developers. So I've got kind of experience on both sides of it, both providing the report with tons of vulnerabilities and also taking the report and trying to fix them.
Very cool. Well, I'm sure over the last 9 years, you've seen quite a change in technology and ways that the bad guys are getting in.
Very much.
Yeah, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about security assessments and penetration testing. So our first question is, what is the importance of performing security assessments?
Well, so besides the fact, of course, that nearly every compliance framework and an increasing number of federal and state laws now require security controls and security assessments, the interesting thing is we're also seeing more and more customers be interested in security and privacy in the programs and companies that they buy from. Of course, it's not enough to simply say you're secure, then we could leave it all to marketing. Instead, you actually, just like a developer would test the functionality of a program to make sure it works before they release it. So the security assessment comes along and says, well, now we also want to test the security of the program to make sure that it's working as well. This is a common problem that a lot of companies, especially as they were migrating to cloud environments, experienced, that they didn't fully understand the configurations and security implications of the new environment that they were trying to move to. So you saw, as a result, applications that worked beautifully, of course, but then were accessing, or they were sending their data to open storage buckets that anyone could access and read at any time. So the security assessment comes in, it's designed to catch those types of vulnerabilities, preferably before they're released to production, but at least before somebody external finds them and creates a PR nightmare.
Well, in addition to when everybody was migrating to the cloud, I'm sure when COVID first happened and everybody was sent home, there had to be a big whole new area of opportunity out there. So I'm sure that security assessment was probably a very good idea to do then.
Oh yeah, security professionals working overtime as that started, yeah.
I'm sure. All right, so it's very important. So I'm just going to ask you real quick, how often should we be doing these?
So that's, yeah, good question. It does depend a little bit on the compliance framework that you're looking at. Generally, and these types of assessment you're trying to do, generally the lighter stuff like automated scanning, anything that you can automate, we generally recommend once a month at the least, and and preferably 2 or 3 times a month, depending on how often your environment is changing. Something more a little heavier might be 1 or twice a year.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so what constitutes a security assessment?
Yeah, so there are lots of different types of security assessments. My focus is generally on penetration testing, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But any assessment you perform or any test that you perform that's designed to test your security controls is usually valid for compliance purposes. And this could be simple, and we talked about automated scanning, right? This could be as simple as vulnerability scanning, some kind of automated tool that's looking for security issues. It could be something a little bit more manual where somebody's actually going in and looking at your security configurations, up to a particular advanced type of assessment called red team assessments that take months and months to complete. You bring in, there's whole teams of third-party consultants. The main priority, of course, is just to remember that the assessment has to make sense for your environment. If your resources, we've talked about the cloud, if your resources are in the cloud, you're going to look at cloud types of assessments. If your resources are all local to a network, or if you only have third-party, vendor programs, those types of things, then you don't have to worry about that quite as much. The one thing that a lot of people overlook is your security tools that are, of course, are the backbone of your security controls are software, just like anything else. And so it's important to test those as well to make sure they're working as you expect them to be.
And definitely having a professional help you with doing this assessment, as opposed to somebody just trying to, take a look themselves. And I always say this, like, to the MSPs, like, what should customers be asking? Like, how should somebody know what to ask when someone's going to be doing a security assessment for them? I know this isn't one of our questions, but, generally speaking, how would you know if somebody was qualified to do this?
Sure. Some of that comes into, are they asking the right questions for you and your environment? A lot of the vendors, the professional testers, they kind of have a one size fits all type of approach. And that's never a good approach because each environment is very different. Each security requirements are very different, right? One company, one person might be required just have federal law applications. Another might have PCI, HIPAA, all types of other requirements that they have to focus on. And like I said, somebody might be developing their own website, or they might not have any custom built code. And that's all a different, very different type of assessment. So you want to make sure when you're talking to professionals that they're addressing your concerns and your environment.
Are you having a hard time finding new customers? A lot of folks just like you in the IT and cybersecurity space are in the same situation. And they have embraced a new opportunity to get new clients. They're doing this by growing their online presence and maximizing the power of LinkedIn. How, you ask? I have a tried and tested method called my Cyber Social Program. I myself have been on LinkedIn and now have over 3.5 million LinkedIn views, and over on YouTube, I have over 750,000 video views. So I can show you exactly how I have done that so that you can promote your organization and become the authority in your industry. And the best part is, I've done all of this organically without one paid ad. You don't need to waste your money over on Google with pay-per-click ads. Now's the time to establish yourself. Look around. The competition isn't doing it. This is your time to shine online before they do. So if you're ready to start your online journey and future-proof your business, please, down below, click the link and schedule a time for us to have a 45-minute call where I can review the exact methodology of the Cyber Social Program. You can also click below to see some of my masterclasses, which will give you quick little snippets of a couple of things you can do right away on LinkedIn that will help with your profile. I hope to see you and hear from you soon.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Okay, so what is penetration testing?
So penetration testing is just one type of security assessment, but it's my specialty. It's also sometimes called ethical hacking. So it's where the tester tries to identify vulnerabilities in your environment, but then specifically tie those vulnerabilities back to a business risk by exploiting them. So this is beyond the capability of most automated tools that'll just give you a laundry list of technical vulnerabilities without any additional business context.
Mm-hmm.
So in a penetration test, that exploit gives you the business context and the more practical risk for prioritizing the issues as much as you can. The example I usually give is you could have the same technical vulnerability on two different servers, but because one server is completely isolated on the network and doesn't talk to anything else, and the other server actually could act as basically a bridge into your internal network and the rest of the organization, so that latter one is actually a much bigger deal.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let me ask you this. When you're doing penetration testing, are you only doing hardware and software, or do you try to do any kind of social engineering with the employees?
So that depends on the client, of course. And like I said, it depends on the requirements, the compliance requirements that you're under, and if that makes sense for the employee. I've worked with customers and clients that only have 5 employees, for example. And so trying to call somebody up and saying, hey, I'm Bob from IT, it's not going to work. They say, no, we don't have a Bob in IT. I know the IT guy. Whereas, I've also worked with clients with hundreds of employees, and that becomes a much more practical exercise. So it really depends on what the client is trying to get out of the engagement.
Okay, well, that's a good answer. Okay, so what is the difference between penetration testing and other types of security assessments?
So beyond just attaching that business risk that I was mentioning, so penetration tests can also identify additional issues that other types of assessments can't. Automated tools can only go so far. The manual effort involved in penetration testing can often find logic flaws, attacks against other users, sensitive data exposure types of issues that an automated tool simply can't. Those extra issues mostly come in because penetration testing is very manual, but also because penetration testers bring a question assumptions type of approach to their testing. Developers, IT managers, network architects, through no fault of their own, of course, often get stuck in how things should work or how they expect them to work, and never think the next step of well, but it could work this other way if you just tweak your assumptions a little bit. I had one particular engagement where I was testing a login portal, which was the most unique login portal I'd ever seen. It was a 5x5 grid of images, and you clicked on 3 images in a sequence, and that was your password. And I assumed the developers thought, well, you can't brute force images the same way you could a password. So they thought it was more secure that way. But it turned out, just questioning some of the assumptions, we were able to basically open the hood and say, well, no, in your code that's running in the browser itself, just on the website that the user has access to, the images are being translated into numbers. So your password is not, say, horse, duck, barn. Your password is actually 1357.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be a very simple thing to write a short little script just locally on my workstation and be able to find all the passwords in the database.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's going into it with a different, mindset. That's a very good point of people just saying, well, this is how it should work. And then you're saying, well, yeah, but how else, could we get around this? And wow, that's a good story. I like that one. All right. So now here's a question people are going to be asking. So is penetration testing right for me? How do you figure out if you need to do this or not?
So yes, so some of that comes into, like, again, the compliance requirements that you're under, and that's something to talk to your audit professional or compliance professional about. PCI, HIPAA, for example, those are very, very focused on penetration testing. Some other ones are much looser about what kind of security assessments you might need. And again, it depends on your environment. I would not say everybody should be doing penetration testing. If you only buy programs or software from third-party vendors, for example, if you only have Gmail and Google Drive and those sorts of software, and you don't have any other business applications, especially ones that you've written yourself, then you don't need penetration testing. Maybe a phishing exercise, some security awareness trainings, and those sorts of things. But in terms of actual technical penetration testing, that would be overkill. You can rely on your legal contracts and requirements with your vendors to know that they're doing the penetration testing, and hopefully that they're fixing any issues. Yeah, hopefully, hopefully they're fixing the issues that are found. Whereas if you do have your own network, whether it's in the cloud or locally, or you are writing your own websites, then penetration testing can be very applicable to you.
Okay, good. Well, that was a good line in the sand to kind of determine, do I need this or do I not need this? So that was good. Well, this was very helpful. Is there anything before we go that you want to kind of throw out there in addition to all the lovely information you just gave us?
Change your password.
Yeah, exactly. No one likes to do that, but that's what we're always saying. Well, thank you very, very much for your time, Nat. I really appreciate it. This was excellent information, and I hope the viewers got a lot out of this, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Take care.
Great. Thanks, Dana.
Bye-bye.